Let's see. Make sure I'm muted. So that's good. All right. Keep that.
I'm going to go in case any.
Oh, I don't. We don't know. We don't know who it is.
Hi, Tom.
Well, you're looking chipper.
You're also muted.
Yeah.
I'm doing fine.
Hey, Tom, how do we sound?
Just fine.
Perfect. Love it.
All right. So we're going to begin the November 7th conservation meeting with the roll call. So we'll start with Dave, our staff.
Here.
Cindy Sante, member.
Larry Dunn, chair.
Michelle Fitzpatrick, secretary.
And on Zoom.
And Tom Olson, member.
All right, and Bray is won't be joining us tonight. So that's the roll call. One of the things that I neglected to do last week, last month, which was Dave's first meeting, was to give him the chance to talk about himself and some of his background, so that we can kind of make notes on when to suck him in to certain.
No, it's.
Oh yeah.
So again, for those of you who are meeting first time in person, pursue. My name is Dave Prescott. I am the new one of the new land use planners here for the town of Groton. My background is in marine biology and environmental chemistry. I actually worked in the nonprofit world for about 22 years. I worked for an organization over in Rhode Island called Save the Bay. My focus was for at least the last 15 years, I served as a South County coastkeeper for Save the Bay. I was one of about 350 waterkeepers around the country. Many of you may be familiar with Bill Lucy, who is a Long Island Soundkeeper, and unfortunately passed Terry Backer. I used to work with Terry Backer prior to him passing too, as well as a soundkeeper. So as waterkeeper, I ran our South County office out of Westerly. So I did a lot of stuff with Westerly and Stonington and focused on the south shore of Rhode Island. And I got to do lots of different things. So I worked on things like public access. We worked with towns on stormwater mitigation projects. We had a bunch of coastal resilience projects, specifically working on salt marshes and using basically technology that they did down south in the Gulf, and also in like Jamaica Bay in New York and whatnot, that worked with taking dredge spoils. Down there, it's very fine sediment, but up here it's lots of sand, and sand is a huge resource. So we actually pumped 70,000, 80,000 cubic yards of sand back onto the marsh surface to help it basically survive under conditions of higher sea levels and drowning and whatnot. And we had two big projects that happened over in Charlestown. Both have been very successful, and I'm happy at some point to talk to them more about those projects and whatnot. Besides that, I worked on, other things. Obviously, I reviewed a lot of plans on the state level and whatnot, and was really involved with lots of different things. So a lot of this is all near and dear to me, and I've worked on several of these things in the past, and I'm very excited to, be here with you on the commission.
Right. Okay, so we all made notes. So,
I did.
Larry, I didn't see you writing anything down.
because we did do this. So I already have you teed up with it. The next item of business is approval of minutes from October 3rd. Those were in the handouts. So
I'll move that we approve them.
are there
I'll second.
second? Any discussion? Okay, vote on accepting the minutes.
Aye.
Aye. Tom?
Aye.
Unanimous with one absentee, staying, however you think it's recorded. Okay, so next we have Public communications. So we really have three folks. This is a banner night. This is, I think, our high watermark for attendees that aren't on the commission itself. So the order I had was Megan. So we'll start with Megan. If you introduce yourself and we can get to your. Oh, gee, but
Absolutely. Well, I was only knees on the Zoom, so I thought fixing more than my feet. So I am Megan Granado. I am the town's new sustainability and resilience manager. So like Dave, have only been with the town for a very short amount of time. I started the end of August, and I'm really excited to be getting to meet all of you. Had the pleasure of meeting Larry and Kristen already, but thank you for giving me a couple moments. So I think the original invitation was for me just to come and introduce myself. So I'll start with that. I have a background in natural resource management, and so a lot of interesting things that relate to the work that you all do on the commission. So I have a bachelor's in biology and environmental science. After that, wasn't sure what to do with my life. Ended up doing a Student Conservation Association internship with Richmond National Battlefield Parks. Worked for the natural resource management specialist and fell in love with that entire field. So at that point in time, did a lot of work on invasive species. Was certified to be an herbicide applicator in the state of Virginia, but did a whole host of things from water quality monitoring to deer population surveys and studying vegetation cover on Civil War earthworks and all sorts of things. So ended up deciding to get my master's in natural resource management from North Carolina State University, where I focused on ecological restoration. And for my master's work, I studied the plants and soils of restored floodplains, streams and floodplains in the North Carolina Piedmont compared to their references. From there, I worked for an environmental consulting firm in California for about 3 years as a restoration ecologist, and was detailed most of the time to the development of a very large scale solar facility out in the Carrizo Plain of California, and did a variety of tasks, including soils management and monitoring, development of habitat and restoration plans, led the monitoring of over 3,000 acres of on-site and mitigation lands in terms of vegetation communities, the work we were doing for restoration. At that point in time, we decided it was time to move back to the East Coast. I'm actually from Connecticut originally. We ended up in Maryland for about 8 years, where I worked for the Maryland Department of Natural Resources. By the time I left, I was the director of our Center for Restoration Finance, and we managed over $50 million annually of state and federal funding that supported many facets of Chesapeake Bay restoration work. So everything from environmental education to water quality improvement projects, non-point source pollution reduction projects, to climate adaptation. So that's really where I became involved in climate at both the state level and then also working with local governments through our funding programs to help understand their climate vulnerabilities and ways that they could address them. So wore a number of hats, participated in my agency's electric vehicle charging task force, was very involved in the state's adaptation resiliency working group, and helped spearhead the effort to put together our plan at the state level for the next 10 years of climate adaptation work. So lots of exciting things all involved with that. And I'm thrilled to be here now. So this is very exciting because it's a brand new position. So not only am I new to the town, but it's, you know, a new position as well. So I've appreciated getting to meet everyone and learn more about what you're doing, and, you know, talking about different things like invasive species that we have in common and interest. So that's sort of me in a nutshell. And then the ask comes about. So one of the things that was really key to my position as it was hired is development of the town's first climate action plan. So of course, our town has done a number of plans and projects related to climate, but we don't have one big comprehensive plan with goals and actions. And so that's what we're going to be working on over the course of, we'll probably start next year, and it'll take about 18 months. The climate action plan is going to address both mitigation and adaptation. So how do we build on work that was previously done to reduce the town's emissions? Look into things like strategies for solar installations and microgrids and all of those things. And then on the vulnerability side, we'll be doing a whole vulnerability assessment and putting together recommendations based on that. We want to really go big on community engagement. We want this to be a more inclusive process than have been done previously. So we're really excited to try to work with the community in any way we can and come up with different communications based on that and provide a whole lot of different ways that people can get involved in the process. So right now we are developing a funding proposal to the state of Connecticut, Department of Energy and Environmental Protection. They have a brand new funding program called the Climate Resilience Fund. And we are requesting funding to support this climate action plan. And I have requested the commission through Larry to see if you all would be willing to give me a letter of support, essentially, for to help strengthen our proposal.
That's an easy ask, huh, Larry?
Having known we had that discussion. What we're gonna do on that is I put it on the agenda for discussion. What I like to do goes to the rest of the public comments. And then I'll probably move that up right in the agenda to talk about the specific letter and get the commission's support or comments on it. I think one of the things we voted on last meeting was to get, I was going to say significantly more involved period with the rewrite, the 2026 rewrite of the POCD. And as I'm listening to both of you, we're fortunate that actually the first time we've actually had conservation trained people.
Subject matter experts.
Subject matter experts on the staff. So that's great. So what I'd like to do is as we go forward on that, we're talking long-term, couple of years out, is that to kind of work you two and the commission as kind of driving a lot of that, getting it back into the rest of the town staff. Anyway, that's one of the things I got out of it. So we'll get back to your ask. But I would also like to invite Jennifer Lamb, who's out there. Allow her to talk.
Thank you for coming, Megan.
Here
she is.
Right, do you want to introduce?
Jen, can you hear us? You're muted according to our
Yeah, you're
picture.
muted. There you go.
There she is.
Hello. Thank you so much for having me. Hold on, let me see if I can turn on some more lights so you can, oh, that's a little better. How is everyone doing tonight?
Good. So I'll introduce you and then you can take over from there. So Jennifer is in charge of the Goodwin Nearing Center for the Environment. Well, maybe not in charge, but you can tell what your position is. But anyway, with it over at Connecticut College, where they have the college, not only your major, but you also have a focus. And the Goodwin Nearing Center is one of the focuses that the students can do environmental studies. And she has a class every spring of they join as sophomores and they do some kind of project. And I'll let you talk about what kind of project. So she's in the past worked with Avalonia quite extensively, working on Avalonia's projects with the students and is looking to expand possibly something different. And I've already talked to you guys a little bit about possible projects, but I figured it'd be much more useful to have Jennifer explain what she does and let you ask her questions directly about how we might be able to, work with her students and use them in our projects. So Jen, having said that, I'll let you take over.
Thank you, Michelle. And so I've known Michelle a long time. I've been running the service learning program. And like Michelle mentioned, almost exclusively, we worked with Avalonia for over a decade. And it really started, our students in the center can be any major, but they have to have some kind of environmental passion. So I get to work with the best of the best. The Goodwin Nearing Center for the Environment's a competitive academic program. So the students are really, they apply knowing they're doing a senior integrated project that ends up being a mini master's. So that being said, they join as sophomores with a very clear project idea, but often they don't get the chance to have really good real world experience. And just a side note, when I worked at Connecticut DEP, that then later changed to DEEP, actually worked with your town. We did back in 2009, it was pretty cutting edge at the time. It was a climate adaptation planning process using Groton as a model for federal, state, and local government. So that was a really fun project. So I've had a long history with your town.
I love the synergy.
and a lot of a real lot of understanding about the deep complexities. And by the way, in my hometown, when I was in my young 20s, I grew up in Hebron, Connecticut. I was on my town's Inland Wetland and Conservation Commission. So very near and dear to my heart. So I feel very blessed to every semester get to work in the spring with about 12 new sophomores who really are here to do something to change the planet. That being said, we like to have these projects. I'm trying to teach them project management. So I like to have the projects be something that's feasible for the students. I have them work in groups. And it's also really helpful if the projects are discrete enough, but also open-ended, so that depending on how, often they'll be a little ambitious with their planning, but at the end, it's important that they have something to deliver to you and your organization that, is something useful, but most importantly is something that they learn how to work with other people as well. I think one of the hardest parts is, Avalonia has been fantastic to work with. When Michelle was past president, we loved working with her, but they really are in a position of not having great capacity to advise. So what would be ideal, the students still indicated that they'd like to do something locally. What would be really ideal is something where there could be an opportunity for us to either attend your meeting or you to come to our class or Zoom into our class and share some potential project ideas. And then, of course, as always, I'm willing to be the kind of moderator. What we did last semester is we worked with an alumni from NYC Parks Brooklyn, who runs all of the parks in Brooklyn, New York. And what we did is I actually had the student groups come up with we had the alumni come up with a little scope of the project and a little explanation and a couple resources. And then I had the students actually develop a list of questions that they had for him, so that it wasn't just death by email for the folks that were advising on the project. So open discussing how we could help with that too. The other thing that's interesting about Connecticut College and our center, so I'm the associate director. I essentially run the whole center, the day in, the day out of everything. But we also have faculty fellows. We have faculty that serve terms, serving as director, but we also have faculty fellows like Michelle and others who have subject areas of expertise. So I know we have at least one student who's joined the center who is a statistics major, and we have a new economics professor who Michelle and I are meeting with tomorrow a little bit more extensively, who's very interested in, I know she shared with me that you have a little economic feasibility kind of modeling going on. So it'd be a good opportunity to pull in some academic expertise as well, but also just to, have the students get a chance to work with you either virtually or ideally maybe some opportunity for in person, because they are sophomores, their travel can be a little bit limited. But it ends up being, spring semester goes fast. So it's really only 3 to 4 months that you're looking at, that they're probably more like 2 months that they're actually really focused on the project. So happy to work with you if you folks are interested in advance to come up with some kind of discrete project ideas to run by them. That was plenty, unless you had questions for me.
Well, we will go back to specific projects, but just also want people to realize that the students also will do cleanups on site, right? So they've done that on Apollonia properties. Almost every group does some kind of stewardship work, right? So another possibility is we're looking at, we just developed the stewardship plans. We're looking at piloting one. And so it's possible to use the students as one of our, sort of a test case of volunteers on that site in the spring. That's correct, right?
Yes, the other great thing that they've done is years and years ago, Avalon didn't have much of a social media presence. So one group of our students actually came up with a Twitter page for them. And they came up with a Twitter page, but they also did an Instagram page. And for years, Avalon didn't really use it. And now it's huge. And then I recently had, it was like 2 years ago, we had another group of students who revived the Instagram and actually took it to the next level and was able to get them to actually get to parents with toddlers. They had the largest turnout ever. It was just like, it wasn't even anything sexy. It was a vernal pool workshop. And they had dozens and dozens of people show up and they were very, very excited. So think about if you were a sophomore in college, you may not have all the time in the world when you're doing a bunch of other things, but I think they're really good about anything with social media. They're good about giving feedback or ideas. Some of them are very interested in policy. What I usually do is an info sheet on each of the students and like their center kind of environmental interests and their majors and their minors. So if you are interested, when we met to discuss this further, you can hear more about the students. That being said, that doesn't mean they'll necessarily pick that exact project. So it is kind of one of these things where, you know, you come and you share projects and then they get to pick kind of which ones they work on. So if you really only have a couple projects you want to focus on, then I would say give them less choice. But if you have some things that you're like, hey, you know, I'd love a second opinion or someone to look at these things, like they're very good researchers too. We've had some folks do some deep history dives in the past. And I could also come up with some example projects they've done. They also did for several years, they've done a blog takeover and have done blogs or other kind of educational or informative content for Avalonia. They also have done scanning of files, things that weren't, you know, really sexy or again, but very, very useful. They had only hard copies of files. So if something happened to them, they would have lost that history. They actually did a really neat project coming up for Avalonia's anniversary. They actually did interviews and little storybook with artwork on some of the folks that had served important roles in Avalonia. And when one of them passed away, like the year after, they actually had that as part of the funeral, which was really, really nice. So it was nice to have a tribute to them, you know, before it was too late. So just giving you an idea of, you know, there's a lot of large scope of things that they can do. Again, you know, it has to be kind of realistic in what they can accomplish in a semester while taking 4 or 5 other classes as well.
But you help us define that though, right?
Absolutely,
So
absolutely.
and then we work with Jen to sort of scope out what makes sense for the students to do. And plus she knows the students really well by then. So, you know, she can help us take our ideas and sort of turn it into actual projects that students.
Well, in addition to the ones we've already,
We talked about a few of them, yeah.
that from what she just said, a couple more thoughts. One is, when you're looking at the pilot program, there's 2 parts. One is the actual cleanup per se, which is interesting. But the other one is, the reason it's a pilot is because we developed 14 stewardship plans and a stewardship book, if you will.
Right, the manual, yeah.
Is to vet that or do a review of that from a whole different perspective. You know, so that, you know, so to me, that would be a coupled one is actually saying, well, gee, maybe if it did something or to go out and do the work and then come back and change the.
Right, so here's
Change the plan,
what's
something
missing
like
in your manual, what we would have liked to see there to help us do this job or those kind of things, basically to beta test the manual is what we're talking about,
Right,
yeah.
right, anyway, so that's one. And then, you know, the social media thing, given we always have problems, is the wrong word. Let's say challenges, thank you, to get volunteers. So, but rather than using what I would call the town website, which is kind of our forum, that doesn't really get you out there. So maybe there's something from a social media point of view. I hate to say Twitter, given the current status of Twitter, but you know, maybe there's a way of getting the word out and getting participants from companies, from businesses, from, you know, a variety of folks via social media versus what we do today, which is that, we call up and make phone calls. Right?
Right.
So that's what, that
Well,
occurred to me.
And the other thing I just thought of, they could take the plan, the management plans for each, and basically do a blog type introduction to each of our properties. That's more of a public oriented thing rather than the stewardship plan that we put together, right? So take, the work that Tom did, no offense, Tom, because your stuff's awesome, but to take it and make it sort of a, public blog friendly type of description of each of the properties.
Okay, so next.
Does that make sense? I mean,
There's a lot of thoughts to turn these 5 or 6 ideas into some action. It sounds like we need the student feedback, not just tell them this is what we want. So I would suggest a subcommittee, which means no more than 3, so that we don't violate, Faith doesn't beat us up on violating the rules. To then work with Connecticut College. We've done 2 with UConn, so you're actually closer, so it's a little bit easier to do.
right.
So I would
I
say,
obviously, yes, I obviously
you're one.
volunteer to be
All right.
part of that subcommittee or maybe. even
do I
lead
have
it.
volunteers for number 2 and or 3?
Just depends on timing for me. I'm not sure about, I'm not ready to jump into it just now.
Okay,
Maybe if I know.
Well, this is linked with our education bullet too, that
That's us, right? Yeah.
yeah, this is, we talked about doing more education and outreach, and this is like the perfect, one of the, really great way to do more education and outreach is to use the students to help us figure it out.
yeah, sure. So
Oh,
we
Tom has
have,
his hand up.
did Tom have his hand up?
Yes,
Is that a question or a volunteer?
both. As far, I'm just a little, because I'm misunderstanding the timeline of when we need to have these proposals to Jennifer. But I'm willing to help out on these ideas that you talked about relative to the introduction of the properties and review of that. I think I could put something together in that area.
Ideally, we could meet and chat about the proposals and ideas before the semester starts, which is late January. So then the idea would be late January, early February, or even mid-February, have you come to class, and that could be done via Zoom or in person. And depending on your schedules, we can make something work. And that would be when you'd actually propose them to the students. So we have lots of time.
Thank you.
Okay, so we have 2.5.
Yeah, I can kind of be,
And,
I'm just,
and
I'll
if you
be,
drop out, I'll back. So,
okay, yeah, I won't be, I won't take a leadership role.
Yeah, that's
I'll
fine.
sail along.
all right, so we'll, I shouldn't say table it. We'll put this on the next calendar item, so we get the full
Right,
list.
so, we'll start
Starting
working
for
with,
January
right.
to present or meet with the students and then work through those options.
Yeah, I would say even by next meeting, we could kind of take this list of stuff we've talked about and maybe even do a little paragraph, maybe sentence or 2 on each one on what we think the project would look like. We could have that done possibly by next meeting, certainly by January meeting. Because Jen and I talk all the time, so it's not like I'm not ever going to see her. I mean, we talk all the time.
Okay,
So this is an easy
And
thing.
what about, we're also having this Earth Day Fair, which is sponsored by the Diddy Bag, but I'm pretty heavily involved with. And we had talked about having some student participation in that, and that's something that they would be interested in doing.
Absolutely. We've had them table for Avalonia and for Mystic Aquarium for Earth Day events.
Well, not just tabling, but I think really being involved in the planning, the execution, like getting the vendors, all the whole thing.
Yeah, that's
so-
one possible project.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yep, so let's work through this.
Yep.
You got the lead, you got the 3 subcommittees, so we can move. I forgot to mention that we're also on the agenda with the town council on our proposal on protecting the properties and changing the deeds. The way we said it is they will come and get us, but I suspect we might be done with it. Hopefully, we'll be
But
done with
tonight,
it.
right?
Tonight.
Yeah.
Oh, they're meeting here again? They're back here now?
Yes.
I saw the room.
Right.
set up.
Yeah, well, that starts at 6:30, and so. But anyway, so if something, then I'll call immediate recess, and we'll go take that, and then either come back or, depending on the hour, just adjourn. So we'll make that decision then. Okay, so we have that.
I guess any other questions for Jen? Because then you can obviously stay or leave as you want, Jen, but just if anybody of the other council.
And I'm happy to just work too with Michelle to quickly, if you, once you have the ideas kind of written down, I can help them to be a little bit more scalable.
All right, thank you. Great, so we're on our third.
Thanks, Jen.
Thank you so much. Have a great day.
Yeah.
So Sue Sutherland is a well-known expert and participant in conservation activities.
A little bit.
A little bit.
Here and there. I'm also on planning and zoning, for those of you who don't know. And I do believe you can only have 2 people on a subcommittee because 3 is a quorum.
For us, 4 is a quorum.
4 is a quorum?
Yeah.
Really? Okay, well, whatever your quorum is. Right, you know,
Yeah, one less than quorum.
yeah, super. I just want to make sure, because I know the town gets, and understandably, everybody gets exercise. Sure, I mean, secret meeting. So anyway, I'm very happy to be here tonight, and I think it was great timing, having you and Megan and also Jennifer here, because a lot of great ideas. Because what I'm going to talk about is actually a 161 acre property that the town of Groton is planning to purchase in the near term. Kudos are really to John Reiner for really driving this and his team. And it wasn't an easy deal. It wasn't a short deal, but they got a state grant to support the purchase price. And he's worked through 1,001 issues with it. So we're hoping that that's going to take place soon. Well, I guess I'm here sort of on behalf of Groton Conservation Advocates. I also work with Abalone on the Tri-Town Preserve up in North Stonington a lot on many of their committees. So, and I certainly keep in touch with GOSA on a lot of things too. You know, GOSA is a big contributor for the Wolfbrook property. I'll keep calling it Waters or Wolfbrook. I apologize.
We'll get a new name at some
Yeah,
point.
exactly. That's one of the things. Yes. But I'll just give you in a nutshell some of my thoughts on it, which are still preliminary. This is a property, it has some of the, well, probably some of the very highest environmental values of any piece of land in town, in my humble opinion. And we have some sites here, such as the Tilcon property or Candlewood Hill property, that most of it's a pitch pine forest, so that's got super high values too. So fortunately, Groton has a lot of different choices. You could say, at what point you say, no, that's so it's good to have this competition. But what this one is known for is really wetlands and vernal pool. Supposedly one of the most productive ones in Connecticut. I've heard New England. I'm not sure what it is. It doesn't. In some ways, it doesn't matter. It's big. It needs protection. And should have that shortly. And it's on Eccleston Brook goes through this property, which goes right to Long Island Sound. So I think Groton's also lucky to have Pequot Woods already preserved for some time, thanks to a generous donation. And that one really kind of drains into this whole big wetland system going down. So sometimes I like to look at both of them together because I think it's a lot. Pequot Woods also has very high environmental value, big wetland, lots of good species and everything. And in fact, Abalone should be getting some land north of there for hope. So hopefully that'll be expanded too. But I think Larry was kind enough to send me your draft management plan for the Waters property. And I thought it was really interesting. And I just wanted to say a couple of things about that. I think with Waters and Wolfbrook property, one of the good things is there's been a lot of scientific studies done. We've had really good botanists in there years ago. You know, it was Whitney Adams doing a good survey. And certainly we've had scientists looking at the wetlands as part of all development proposals through the years. But this has been going on decades, really. And has anybody really been in there recently or, you know, at any one time? No.
They are, those studies are dated.
They are dated. And I think the other thing too, it's not an easy property to walk across because it has the whole wetland where it's going up it. And it's a deep wetland. It's not like some where if you walk into the swamp or something, yeah, you get your boots or hiking boots muddy or something like this. No, we'll be up to here in water in some places, which makes it pretty amazing because it has almost like these tunnels within it too. So not all of us like that, but it has a whole mix of habitats, including ridges too. Like most of Groton, you've got these north-south ridges of granite. So it also makes it very beautiful and interesting. So anyway, I think because it's such a large environmentally rich site, we'll keep that in mind. And I really think we need a planning group. We were talking about projects tonight. I think I've got 20 projects. Well, I think there's a lot of interesting projects that are possible. I thought what an opportunity. It fits into. I should say the other thing. I'm head of the environmental committee of Mumford Cove. That's where I live. I get into the looking into the salt marsh, and coastal, resiliency and all that. So all this, it's great, perfect time to hear all this stuff. And in some ways, these properties help with that too. So I do think we need a core planning group of some sort from the various groups that are interested. I would hope also would have for some of these GCA. I would be happy to be that person. The town, be involved with folks. However you think would be best. You don't want these things to be a monstrosity because we want it to be small and efficient. And so, but anyway, I think it's good to have a group of different interests involved, but still knowledgeable about what it's like. All of a sudden have a very large property to manage and to figure out how the public's going to have access. Sure.
Sue,
Feel free to ask any questions.
yeah, well, that's, so my wheels are spinning. And right now, our stewardship manual has just a lead volunteer for each property. And it sounds like what you're saying, and I agree with you, that we maybe want to expand past that original idea of what we had for properties in general. And we need something a little bit more intense and bigger for this particular property. Is that what I'm hearing from you?
Initially, because I think there are a lot of tasks that have to be done pretty much towards the start. And I can go through some of these. So one thing would be the name, quite honestly. Groton Conservation Advocates, when we were working on the King property next to the elementary school, elementary school. We actually work with the Pequots on that quite a bit, because there was, of course, a big battle in this area. The battle was on both the Pequot Woods and also the Watrous and the Woodford property. So definitely, there's a lot of data on it. I did talk with Kevin McBride. He was ecstatic that this might be preserved. So, and when you think that the schools are way less than a mile away, I think it'd be such a great educational opportunity for someone that has a kind of talent to communicate to all levels, people, ages and all that. And that's not me. I don't have any experience in that really. But I think there's, to be able to stand there and have somebody be telling you what happened and stuff, but it's not it's a difficult history to talk about. It was the same with me in the preserved assassin. But we worked through that. Both worked hard. It was tremendous. So I think that's a major thing, to come up with a plan, what a name for it. And I also think we need a stewardship group. I was very happy to hear you say the word invasive. That's one of my key things. But I think we need to survey the whole property, see what it's like. We have no idea. Are we going to go into the middle of the wetlands and find mighty city? I hope not. I kind of probably the middle's probably all right, but I don't know. So we have to at least take a look. What's on the outside edges? Do we have the Japanese knotweed, no grass, or whatever? And I think volunteers can do that. And for some, I think it's an opportunity, quite honestly, for people to get an idea of what's out there now. There's no such thing anymore as a pristine property. I know when Avalonia bought the 527-acre Tri-Town forest, we walked in and we said, "Oh, this is pristine. There's nothing invasive here." Well, if you see my invasive map, like covered with Japanese barberry and Japanese salad. But not anymore. We have a very successful program there, and the invasives are under control. I'm happy to say. You know, it's such a beautiful place. I'm like, I want to walk in there and see all this stuff. No.
So I have another
Yeah.
question. Is that kind of survey something that you could have the students do, like train them enough to do it, or you need somebody that has more experience to do the kind of an invasive survey?
I think I really know a lot about invasives.
But, I mean, could you train a handful of college students to?
And I would enjoy that.
I'm
That's what I'm
guessing
wondering,
you
is that-
need some quote professional help, and it might then.
In
use-
addition to have them, right, so so maybe have them be part of that process, but
Once they learn to recognize, I mean, there's certain, once you learn to recognize it, you go, there it is, it's not
Right.
rocket
Well,
science, you get maybe
well-
one kid learns 5 species that they're gonna look out for, and you got 5 kids, and so you got 25 species covered.
Yeah, like some people are not interested. Found that out in life, much like, I was like, how can you not be? But a lot of people are not. And, but Connecticut has a great group too, the Connecticut Invasive Group, and great publications.
So it sounds like a couple of things are coming together. Yes, we've obviously been well embedded in the acquisition process, but and we've got that initial management plan. But I think you make a good point, is that similar to the structure that was put in place for Pequot Woods, it might be because of the money donated from various organizations, GCA, goes included, that we need my thought is we should have an inclusive steering committee, whatever the right name is, to address some of these items. So I would ask David, as our staff, is to say, we need to start now. And I think the question is, I'll do this without objection. We're proposing that there be a steering committee or some body that is, obviously involves town staff, but also involves GOSA, GCA, Conservation Commission, and potentially some other local conservation groups. Not too big, but to provide that kind of steering committee. That, then there's a whole bunch of things that come after that. I think we need to start, let's say with something that we can at least get some direction on. We still don't quite own it yet. I keep getting reminded of that. Close, but all the hurdles, another town of Groton, by the way, has done everything that they have to do to close it. It's now the last thing is up to the state to then do the last step. So it's like that close. But we've been that close for 2 years.
Well,
Not that close. But we've been working on it for a couple of years. So I would ask that as a way to get this started, that provides some direction, and then we can take a lot of the thoughts you've had and kick off from there.
Right, well, I think besides invasives, which is, I always start with that because you want to get out there early and see what it really looks like.
Well, I think the study is probably one of the first actions, but what's their update? The study from it's almost 20 years now.
Well, that's another thing I would suggest. There's a couple of things here. I think a forestry plan. You've got a really interesting mix of forests there. I mean, how often do you walk into a property and this is a chestnut oak forest, nice ledges around and stuff like that, and there's some beautiful beech forests that are quite healthy still. I know beech is challenged. Go farther on, you might see some enormous tulip trees, towards the north of it and stuff too. And so got different, tree species throughout. And I think it's pretty, well, when I was with GOSA, we got a forestry plan for the sheep farm for nothing. And I don't think that's out of the question. I know some of the retired state foresters are really good and they love doing this stuff. So I would hope we could at least get a good forestry. What do you have? What should we do? And maybe nothing. Sometimes that's
So we need a list of retired employees.
I know.
Okay.
Yeah, there's several people who are pretty good. But, they give us some really good ideas. They're very practical too. We're not talking. everything. But it's good to know what you have because that's gonna influence what species you have, so on. And my other thing was more scientific study, like you said, for sure. We just scratched the surface, I think, even though you already found a lot of very rare plants, actually, quite a list. Those trail planting is a big deal. And I think this property has great opportunities just for fun. I just took a map here and I said, okay, what if we connect this into everything I know? And this is like only wrapped in big letters, flashing letters on this, but but you can see, and sorry for my back, but with Water's property here, and you can see all the blue marks for wetlands, but it connects out really to these corners. Whoever planned this little connector over the Pequot Woods, I'm hoping that works. And I know some of these are a little bit, need some clearing, but the town park and rec staff is terrific, to work with.
Mark Berry wants to be. I know we talked about this, and he really talking to Deb today. Like he wants to be that lead. They have the experience to deal with coordinating volunteers and whatnot.
But the lead for this property, the steering committee, you mean?
It's from at least from the staff perspective. That's what Deb said to me. He wants to
be part of this
Yes.
group for
Yes.
that specific property. He's already interested in doing that.
That's what Deb mentioned to me today.
perfect.
So.
No, that's good. Yeah. yeah. I was just making
sure.
sure that I was hearing what you were saying.
Well,
but,
So Deb told me we can confirm it specifically.
Now that you have,
I know.
I expect you to come back and
Yeah.
I will
Yeah,
document it
yeah, I know exactly.
in our next,
No,
our
but
next
that's
meeting.
what she said, that basically he has, they already do that anyways with volunteers, so
Right.
he's the right person to be able to do that.
Perfect.
Doing their staff too. We worked with Mark Berry's group, Mark Berry and his group on the Sassafras property.
We're making progress. We've got town staff is. Mark,
Did a
we
great
got
job on the Sassacus trails. Beautiful.
Sue, Sue, with her name down.
Well, what was nice about the Sassacus property, there was one person who worked part of Mark's team and everything. And he came up and he says, this is so wonderful. He said, my son goes to school right here, the Kolnowski School, and he's so proud of me. I'm out here making a trail. I thought, no, it's getting better. So I think there'll be a lot of opportunities, and there's also the towns, I think, updating their trail system too, so we might be able to work together, and they'll probably have all kinds of great ideas. This is just, I've done a lot of trails. It's not like I haven't done trails. I've done trails since I was a teenager, actually. But this is just a first saying, where are their access points, where are the populations and all. And we're getting, and then we'll have to talk about what uses are going to be allowed and all that. That's all part of it. Interesting steering committee discussion, I'm sure. And last thing I have, I want to take up your whole night here, is historical signage, which I kind of alluded to. But I think it's a great opportunity to probably work with it's Dr. Kevin McBride. He was with the Pequot Researchers so many years. He came and looked at the sheep farm when we first were working on that with Groton. It was terrific. And certainly has walked the Pequot Woods and had his team in there, his artifacts, as well as the Wolfport Water's property. I'm hoping they have something good put together as far as the history, because I got one opportunity. So what else? What else are we missing? This is just my current list.
That's probably enough for now. You missed my opening before the meeting. I said, the good news is there's so many things and so much interest out there in conservation these days. The bad news is there's so many things and we need to be careful in terms of our priorities and how we kind of work on certain things. So trying to do leverage to me is what we've got to do. We've got to be a leverage organization. So getting, helping get a community group that takes the leadership on that property is great. I mean, if we can participate, a member, that'd be great, but we can't, we can't do it all, right? So as you know, you can't, you gotta get a lot of people in there. I appreciate it. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thanks so much, and look forward to working with you. Any questions or anything comes up? So that's
We get lots of notes.
okay.
Lots of
Great.
notes. Now, we're still in public communications, if you believe it.
Well, yes or
Oh,
no?
yeah.
We
I
might
mean,
take some other things that.
yeah, some of the stuff we talked about in the rest of the agenda, yeah.
Also,
So,
Yep.
so I do have, in the, there's a couple of things that were published in terms of letters. Let me share on the screen just so we're all talking the same thing. Screen
Is
sharing, screen
Jim
sharing.
Furlong or Mary Ellen Furlong gonna
Ah,
speak?
I said, they got to raise,
They're just attending.
I can ask him.
if you want to talk, please
Mary-
raise your hand.
Yeah, Mary Ellen or Jim, are you interested in saying anything? Raise your hand if you can. Or.
Okay, so we will, so I'm going to. No, no,
Wait,
no,
wait.
no, no. All right, so the two letters are in the handouts. And so I'm not gonna read them, but, one was,
We talked about this last week. Last month we talked about
did we
this.
talk about this particular
I
letter?
brought this, no, the topic of.
Oh, the
shouldn't
topic
town
was,
be Preserving
but then,
trees on, yeah,
we've got a specific
yeah,
letter
right, it's
from
good.
DCA. In terms of a tree process and the proposed property reuse policy. I'm gonna talk about the town's property reuse policy under my section, because I attended a meeting on that, and I'll wait till then. But I guess this is now for input. I'm not sure unless somebody has any questions. There's nobody from, now that she left, nobody from GCA, and Liz is not here. But we do understand it, and Tom was participating. His name is included in that note. So let me leave that, let me table that on the reuse proposal process for later. The second one was on a specific property, 517, 571 Gold Star Highway property. And you know, if you look at that, again, it's related to the same thing, which is reuse. And if you look at it, there's like this skinny piece that's right on the Gold Star Highway. And then there's a big back end lump, right? That's kind of like back there.
Is that?
Are you talking a big lump of apartments, a big lump of tree, like what do you have?
Well, the trees are in the back.
The trees are in the back.
So
Okay,
you know
this is
where the accurate places and that kind of stuff? On Gold Star Highway? Yes, it's in that part of the town. But it's right on, to me, that's a commercial strip. So you kind of have a commercial strip in front, which to me is, my own view is pretty obvious. That's, you know, gonna be, you know, certainly I wouldn't have a problem being sold. But then the way you look at it structured, you got a big part in the back, which abuts a conservation area. So, you know, on that, I particularly talked about that with John Reiner about, you know, saying, and I kind of went out on a limb and spoke for you guys and said, well, we're not necessarily adverse, you know, to selling town property, but you know, this looks like an ideal place for a conservation easement or something that would protect the property. So we had a dialogue back and forth. He says, look, he says, as we get through that, there are ways of providing a level of protection, and that needs to be done when we do it property at a time. So it all gets back to the town reuse process, which I said I'll get into later. So suffice it to say that we're now in the Conservation Commission is now part of the process. And I'll kind of give you an update on where that is in a little bit. So these were a generic question or a generic proposal and a very specific one on a specific property. So it's going to have to be addressed on a property by property basis when we get there. So those were, and I think we finally got through public, only an hour. We got through public comment. This is a new record. So that we can come back to Megan. We started with her and we'll end with her. So later on in there, you'll see something called the Sustainability Grant. I think I got that one right, the Sustainability Grant Program.
But that's, is that different? Because that I thought was, when I looked at your notes before, I thought that was specifically, that was other deep funding that was looking at food composting. Not what she's talking about, which is the
No,
resilience.
I thought there was, hold on, I thought I had. That
Yeah,
was
it's-
materials management, that's
Yeah,
not,
which is different.
that's not one. But I got the proposed letter from Megan, let me get off of this. That I don't think I put in here, so she did propose a letter for us to submit. Now, we have done letters before. In fact, on this property, we just talked about, we put in the letter on that, right, to support it. And I think my comment looking at your letter was, you know, my own view is we needed, I wanted a little bit more specifics on the detail. So you were did you do additional updates to that or?
Oh, I didn't interpret your comment to mean specific to the letter itself, right? Through our conversation tonight, I wanted to give you a little bit more of an overview of what the climate action plan is and will be, and I'm happy to answer questions about that. If you had specific questions, you know, I have a 17-page proposal that's going through internal review right now that I don't want to overwhelm you with. But if there are specific things that you would like to know before you feel comfortable endorsing, you know, with a letter of support, by all means.
Right, that's kind of my point, like to endorse specifics, not just.
You want specifics in the letter.
Yeah,
I
just so
wanna-
we can make it sound like it's not just a generic stamp, but like, no, we've really looked through, thought
Yeah.
about it and like really targeting on important points or something.
Yeah, so to me, it's a more significant input that shows that, hey, we know what we're talking about. Whether we do or not, it's a different question. It looks like we do. So maybe the way to be is if we can get a draft of that.
Yeah, if you're comfortable with us looking at it, or is that,
We have an
Is it
executive
privileged
summary
or-
that sort of gives an
Or,
overview of the
yeah.
types of things that are in it.
So it's just a proposal, right?
Yeah.
So it's a proposal that unfortunately is due on Thursday. So I am on a pretty quick turnaround. We are going through internal review. The grant program was only launched about a month ago, so all of this is kind of happening at rapid pace. I will say, because this is sort of a large overarching climate plan, the proposal itself, although it talks about what we're going to be doing and how, it doesn't go so far as to say, oh, we are going to address conservation in this way, right? So if you're looking for like those types of more granular things, that's going to be hashed out during the process itself.
Now, I guess what I'm looking for is, what's the work product that comes, the grant's gonna provide money to do something. And what you're saying is it's gonna create a plan.
Yes.
Okay, so the plan has to have some structure, otherwise why would I give money to it, right?
Oh,
So what are the objectives that the plan would then address? And that's what I was looking for, to be able to kind of put some of that, I mean, I'll be happy to do it. I can turn it around, you know, in a couple hours if I had more to work with. Right now, it's like generic, give us money because we're gonna do good stuff. And I don't like to
no, I understand.
support that kind of
I
a.
mean, to your point, as someone who worked as a funder, you like to see letters of support that are specific, right, about the value of the project. So I did, in the template that I sent Larry, I included at least one space for a little bit more of that personalization. The plan itself, as I mentioned, is going to address both adaptation and mitigation, and then also the third part of it is essentially setting up an accountability framework. So on the mitigation side of things, we are going to, between now and the summer, when hopefully this would all start, we're going to update our energy benchmarking for the town facilities. So that's going to give us a good point of view to understand what are our current emissions. We've had benchmarking done previously, but it's outdated at this point. We also, fortunately, have an energy action plan that was put together in 2013. It's been partially implemented. It hasn't all been implemented. So we're going to be doing an assessment of, okay, all the recommendations of that plan, what's checked off the list, what still has to go, what are good recommendations versus what are recommendations that now the technology has progressed to a point that they're no longer particularly timely. The added piece to the mitigation side of things is going to be doing a strategy for solar and electrification like town fleet vehicles, for example. So what are our opportunities for solar installations, other things associated like microgrids, electric vehicle charging, right? There is this huge push at the state and federal level about conversions to electric vehicles. So we need to plan out what our response to that is going to be. We currently have 3 town properties with those facilities, but are we going to be looking to expand that? So all of those sorts of kind of discussions that are going to have to be had. On the adaptation side, as I mentioned, we're going to do a full vulnerability assessment, and that is going to include, of course, socioeconomic considerations, so understanding more about the community and its needs. All of those climate considerations, pulling in data from CERCA and the state about sea level rise and storm surge and increases in heat. I should say as well, the climate risks that we're going to be looking at are pretty large. So it's not just flooding. We're going to be talking about heat. We're going to be talking about extreme events. We're going to be talking about both coastal and kind of non-coastal, like stormwater, riparian flooding, wind, routes. So the full gamut of climate hazards. So through our vulnerability assessment, where we're looking at socioeconomic considerations, we're looking at the built environment, so where our infrastructure is, our existing drainage systems, our sanitary sewers, roads, culverts, all of those sorts of things. And I mentioned we're also looking at environmental aspects as right. Where is our conserved space in open space lands? Where do we have the different indicators for natural areas that are particularly valuable? I forget exactly what Connecticut's designation of that is, right? So where do we have all of these natural resources as well? Where are our wetlands, tidal marshes, all of that's going to get wrapped into this vulnerability assessment. So from there, we're going to be working to identify kind of goals for the town, as well as an action plan of how we are going to achieve those goals. I'm also looking to make this plan as actionable as it can be. So I talked with Mark Berry again briefly about, if we could have the consultant help us do preliminary assessments of maybe up to 5 town-owned properties for some on the ground resilience focused projects that could be put in place. So tree planting, living shorelines, bioretention, all of those sorts of things. We're also going to be looking at our critical facilities. Fortunately, we have a couple of assessments that have looked at a subset of the town's critical facilities, but not all of them. So we're going to look to try to kind of round out the bases on that. And so that is sort of mitigation and adaptation. The accountability framework at the end is going to be all about, okay, how do we take all this planning and how do we put it into action in a way that can be tracked, that we can be responsive and responsible to the public about what we are doing. So we're going to be figuring out kind of what the approach for that communication is going to be. We're going to be prioritizing all of these actions based on things like co-benefits, and of course, figuring out priorities and cost and who should be responsible. So really trying to assign like what has to happen and who needs to be involved to make that happen. And we're also going to be working with the consultant team to try to put together some outreach strategies so we can keep the momentum going. So this plan is something that actually, really has legs to it, and we can go from the momentum of planning into hopefully the momentum of implementation. I mentioned a couple times we're going to be hiring a consultant, which is what the funding request is for. We're going to be looking for a consultant or a consultant team that has expertise with, of course, all of the technical aspects of this, as well as how to really engage communities in an inclusive and equitable way, as well as one that has really extensive expertise with public engagement and messaging and communications. Knowing that climate change can be, it's fair to say, kind of tricky to talk about, right? You have to hone your messaging based on who you're talking to. Another thing that we really want to try to do this planning process is including the float school system. those students are, you know, younger generation, they're dealing with our decisions of today longer than we are. So if there are ways, I was unfortunately supposed to have a meeting this morning with the Marine Sciences Magnet Pool that had to get rescheduled, but I also have emails out to a couple other folks with the school system, like, how can we complement all the curriculum that's already happening around these issues, and hopefully do so in a way that creates, you know, opportunities for the students to participate in this process so that their voice is heard.
So,
That's a question too, so whatever.
Don?
Thank you. One thing that I'm a little concerned I haven't heard is the timeline of when are you applying for this Deep Climate Resilience Fund that on track number 1 that's for the planning applications? Because that has a deadline of this week,
Correct.
Thursday.
Yeah.
Thursday. Okay, I just want to make sure I'm talking the right one. I think, Larry, from the big picture here is looking through the application that's online. Megan has described eloquently what she has to be doing to put stuff in here. From our viewpoint, and where we can support her, is that we can be giving her a letter that says that we are a willing participant in developing this plan and in future execution, rather than we're not trying to, you know, up or down anything that she's saying in the application. I think it's more of a letter of support to saying that we are committed as a portion of the municipality government here to support this action that's being provided by the staff. I think that's what the focus of our letter should be at. Do you agree with that? Understand that, Larry? And does Megan agree with that?
Well, we now have, you know, an exposition of what's in the plan. I didn't know anything about it. So other than, you know, you're submitting something, please support it. So given what you said, well,
No, I just, it's,
you know, mitigation, vulnerability assessment, accountability, socialization, you know, so I have enough that I in fact could actually do what Tom said. But I didn't want to support something that says, Megan submitting something.
Megan's awesome, give her some
Give
money.
some money.
Who knows what she's doing.
Well, I don't know what the hell she's doing. So I think now, Dom, I've got enough from this discussion that I think, well, I shouldn't say that. With the commission's approval, to make a motion that says, given what Megan has said, that do we support, supporting that submittal for the fund, and then authorize me to, because I got to get this to you tomorrow, basically.
Yeah.
Right. To authorize me to go provide that letter based upon the discussion we had today.
You got it, Larry.
Yep.
All right, so without objection, so.
Yeah, just without objection, that's an easy one, yeah.
I like the without objection.
It's a great thing for everybody, nobody's agreeing, so.
Yeah. Okay,
Thank you, thank you, thank you.
Oh, yeah.
I appreciate it.
We'll be there
Just
with
get
you
really
the
happy
whole
that
way.
you have that accountability piece in there. I think that's been missing at the state level in Connecticut. We've missed all our targets on emission of the global warming solutions.
so we say
Act
stuff,
that
but then we don't
2008.
execute.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and even what the governor passed last year, it doesn't have accountability as part of that.
Just
It's something
yeah,
that we're
the kind
gonna.
of, I think we're interested in doing this stuff.
And I think, you know, from the standpoint of the town committing to that, they hired Megan.
That's
You know,
right.
so that
Right.
this shows how big of a priority this
Right,
really
right.
is for the town. So it's not just, you know, we're not just saying we're gonna do something.
Right.
But by the way, how much you asking for?
200,000. We have.
Not a lot.
That doesn't sound, no, that doesn't sound
I should
unreasonable at all.
double it.
And we have capital funds already at 85,000 as well.
So
So
185K
it
total.
would be 285 total.
That's awesome.
All right, good start. Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, so we can check off that, take off that. Okay, so, well, I guess, I think we will get through them some of the stuff. Because the next item of business was the Con College project again, which we've already,
Yes, and I would also like to just, I know we had 3 that we already gave and I'm racking my brain. So I know one of them was the general Earth Day thing that
Earth Day Fair.
Earth Day Fair. The other one was to help us create our rotating booth. What was the third one?
We had to quantify the pollination.
Oh,
Yes, the pollinator. grants, that was
Pollinator
the third one.
economic value.
if that,
And
I
it's
thought
basically-
it was something with the model, but I
Yeah,
can't
it
remember.
had
All
the
right.
pad for the
Yep,
model
yep,
for
yep.
pollination gardens that you do
Yep.
not have.
Okay,
that's
pollinator
what that is.
value.
And I,
That's great because we're meeting with the economics guy tomorrow, so I can bring that up with him too.
that's a really cool one, I think, for the projects wise, because I think that has a lot, it's not just economic value, but they could really add a lot for it, making a big, they're all
it's-
great, they really are, but
it's-
there's a lot
yeah, it
to it.
has, yeah. First of all, there's a base. So you're adding to the base.
Yep.
Right? And you do have to do research. I mean, that's why I thought it was interesting, anyway.
Yeah, no, this, okay, I knew it was a model, it's like, what,
So
what's
out of
that?
all the ones you forgot the one I said.
I know,
All right, I'll remember that. Okay.
I knew it had to do with your model, I just couldn't remember the details.
I was supporting
Yeah, thank you.
pollination. All right, so that was the Con College, we've kind of done that.
Yep.
The open space protection motion, that one is, we were authorized, Tom and I were authorized to put together a presentation. It's in the agenda. And it's going to be presented tonight. So Tom, given you're there, is that you're gonna be there virtually. So I'm gonna be in the room and anyone
Yes.
else that wants to stay can obviously be there. And so what I was gonna do was just introduce you, Tom.
Okay.
Did he know he was doing this?
Oh, he knows he's there.
Oh,
No, I've been involved in this, in the drafting the whole presentation with Larry. We went back and forth and one of us can present.
So he's fine with it. I guess my only comment is I reread it again before is that I think even though it's in there, the Zero Flanders Road, we probably shouldn't focus on because that'll just lead everyone off into the Netherlands.
Oh, I agree. This thing is, we're just giving an update and information and going to kind of move right to the recommendation area, and we put the referral motion into the thing, and that's what's in the actual referral itself. Says take a look at the text that we're proposing.
Right, so that's there, which is basically nothing new from what the commission has already approved. So we're ready to go on that. We're guessing that might be 7:30.
7:38, hopefully 8, and we can bang out the rest of the agenda and get this completed, and then transition to that.
Okay,
Let's go for 7 then instead of 8.
that's fine. Oh, well, hey, I don't disagree with that. We can do it, we can do it. I can keep you on.
The thing about the town council meeting is that it's really packed with a lot of stuff. And we're kind of right in the middle of it. The ARPA funding is after us, but there's a lot of contentious stuff before us. So it's just a matter of how long it takes. And it's a real, roll the dice to some degree as far as on what gets their knickers up, as far as on how the discussions are going to go.
I told my wife it's gonna be 10 o'clock by the time I get home.
Tom, I did talk to John Reiner before, and he thinks 7:30, 8, more likely 8 based upon the agenda. So
I agree.
if we can.
It could be 11 too. So
We can do it. I know we can do it.
Yeah, well, we've been getting out by 7 lately, but
Perfect.
we'll see what happens. Okay, the next item is a World Book acquisition, and we actually talked about that as well. So that we kind of check off. The stewardship manual, is there? I mean, we just talked about a little bit with an idea of using the Con College as maybe.
Yeah, I think
a
we.
way of looking at that or vetting that.
I think we have a couple of opportunities now. One is whatever we end up doing with the birch.
Right.
The one, the cover or whatever, right? And then this Wolfbrook is another really good place to look at, how to take that manual into the more robust area, and to have the students help with that. So I think we've got some possibilities because we don't really want to finalize it until we've tested it a little bit.
No, that's why we call it a pilot. So,
Yeah.
yes.
Yeah, but I think we have some possibilities for testing it, so.
Okay, so
Yeah.
speaking of that, I went out to the RTM members in District 1, which is where the Birch Creek Plain,
Birch Plain Creek, is that what
Plain,
it is?
where Birch Creek pilot
There we go.
is. I reached out to GCA, I reached out to prior council members. And quite frankly, I got zero response from any RTM member, which is somewhat very disappointing. I would have thought at least saying, gee, I support you, but I can't. I got nothing, silent. So I have not been very successful in getting management.
At least
leadership
volunteer, yeah.
Any volunteer to do that. So I'm looking for, all right, so who else can we go after? I did try to assume she was interested, but it looks like she's now wants to devote herself to the Wolfbrook
Right.
property. So, I mean, it might be, maybe we wind up from a practicality point of view, maybe we got to shift the pilot.
Yeah, and do
to Wolfbrook. I don't know.
Wolfbrook first,
But
unless we find a lead volunteer. Basically, wherever we get a lead volunteer, that's gonna be our pilot. So-
I like the idea of Wolfbrook in that it's not a pre-existing property, it's brand new to the whole open space in the town versus something that's already been, trails have been made. Maybe it's nice starting from scratch, maybe, and since I think Sue wants to lead that anyways.
Well, yeah, she definitely wants to be part of the steering committee. So it's basically, we'll have a whole steering committee, and the steering committee can figure out who the lead stewardship volunteer is. Because that's one of the positions, right? Is the lead stewardship person. So they've got to figure out who, they've got to find somebody to be that person for that property. So, that might be the better choice to work with.
And you're exactly right. I was gonna add one point. There's a lot of excitement around it.
Mhm.
So I think when this becomes finalized and the closing happens it sounds like by the end of the year, I think you might have a better luck getting someone to say, yeah, this is brand new, it's exciting.
Yeah, so we just go with what we can,
well, yeah,
we
that's
can't create something out of nothing. We gotta find something and use it, right?
what we did. We created stewardship.
That wasn't really out of nothing.
Yeah, point taken.
This is Tom.
Yes, Tom.
On this discussion, I would caution us. I think Sue brought up a very good point that Wolfbrook is so special that in what she's proposing here is to putting it at a separate level, similar to COP and Pequot Woods, which has their own trustee group that's managing it. And so she's basically taking this out almost from dedicated open space into managed open space. And having Mark Berry already showing interest, he's the head of the managed open space contingents so I think we'd be better off still trying to stick with the Birch Plain. We've kind of had some commitments here through the ECCD folks and their whole Baker Cove initiative.
That's
And the tie with the city. I think we still, but knowing that, I think this gives the opportunity for an ideal project for these students to come along to do some type of cleanup and also to kind of take a look at how we go execute the management plan. It doesn't
Chuck
really
and
have to have
Birch
a
Creek is
permanent
with that,
person, it
Tom,
could be
right?
a leader.
Yeah, and the thing that is.
Yeah, Birch Creek is the project for the students.
Yes.
But we need a lead volunteer. We gotta have somebody that's in charge of connecting that group with the plan.
Tom, as our representative to the Baker's Cove, is there somebody in that community that would be willing to step up?
I can go back and talk to the GOSA folks because they are part of the Baker Cove thing and they have committed in the past. If I to go to talk to them from a leadership position, which is a little bit different spin, that may, if we're looking for a leader coordinator, they may be able to find somebody because they have had that in the past. But excuse me, but I think that might be a way to go because we made a commitment to, I think, internally to ourselves that we don't want ourselves to get involved because we could get too spread out here. But the flip side of it is we need to go find some volunteers to some degree, and particularly doing this one step at a time. We have time here if we were to target to go out and says, oh, we're going to find somebody in the January, February timeframe. That's when we need your person. for a project that would be in the February, March, April timeframe, and be a big, potentially a cleanup effort, because that was mentioned, coordinating and reviewing the stewardship plan. We already have the document here for you to review. We also have the manual for the leaders, people to review. I think that this could all be coordinated together, and then test them to some degree on the social media perspective of getting the volunteers to do the cleanup, because that's really what they're looking for the Baker Cove thing. I give you an example. As I kayaked up the Baker Cove about a month or in August, there's a number of tires and stuff, particularly along the section that the Thames River Magnet School is probably the worst section, is where the town owns it. So trying to get involvement from that as far as pulling stuff out of there might be a targeted area right now that we could be utilizing. So I just got to kind of focus you rather than looking at the Wolfbrook. I think we really should take some credence with what Susan was there, and I think Dave can take a look at it. In both of the cases of Cop and Pequot Woods, the way the town received that property, there were conditions, and that's really what generated having those special commissions that are out there, providing oversight. And Bray obviously is not here to stand up for Pequot because he's on that board. But I know that we've been working with, through my Tri-Town Trail, have been working with the COP folks, and Mark Berry is heavily involved with that also, because Parks and Rec is doing all the maintenance and trail building at COP. But to set up a third one of these organizations is going to take a lot, particularly when we don't have the driving factor of the grantor per se doing it. So I don't envy Dave's position here as taking the action to put something together, but it might be the right answer based on the things that and the big picture that Sue brought to the hold here, that we should be treating it as a similar type of, as it is about the same size as those other two parcels, 160 plus acres that need special stewardship above and beyond what the small effort that the stewardship plans are doing from the Conservation Commission. Thank you.
Okay, so out of that, you said you'd go back to Baker Cove, see if you can get a volunteer there. I mean, I'll continue to beat my head against the wall and see if I can come up with something. And as part of the Concord one of the options is, we already talked about,
Clean up on that
clean up
property.
and support on that,
Yep.
on that part.
Yep.
Okay. Next item is the conservation outreach program. And let me,
Larry, can I ask one question?
yeah,
So the sustainability grant program there.
Yep.
Are we going to talk about that? Because again, like, I think you brought it up, it's a materials thing, and we don't have to, but I know that that's different than what Megan was talking about. When I looked at, and you had it pulled up and
oh,
said,
yeah, I had it, yeah, I'm looking at it here. It is, yeah, I did kind of skip over
and we
it.
can table it till next month too. That's fine. Obviously we're talking about a lot of stuff. But I just wanted to make sure we didn't skip that.
All right, fair enough. I mean, let me just point out, because the reason I threw it in the agenda, where are you? Where are you? Huh. I lost,
Their screen.
oh, there it is. Yeah, Zoom, I lost Zoom. I'm gonna do share screen. And I will look at. I think that's it. Okay. So, I mentioned, I think, that, sometime in the meeting about, there's so much stuff going on in this space. I'm getting, probably every other day, I'm getting something on pollination, something on sustainability materials, something. I mean, in one hand, it's heartening, because when we started this, what, 5 years ago?
The crickets, yeah.
It was crickets,
Yeah.
literally. We couldn't get anybody to pay attention to anything. So that's the good news, bad news. Now we got so much to do. So this came across my desk and I looked at it and went, oh geez, we're interested in this. It's yet something else. And I'm going, how much can we do? Because I know one of the things that you were interested in is the composting, that kind of stuff. So this is in that light, in that vein of materials management. I don't know if the town of Groton, maybe the question I have here, Dave.
I might have an answer to you because I asked about this. So good.
Is does the town have any interest in participating or pursuing some of that funds?
So I asked this to Deb, and so I think this is something that we're interested in. The challenge is that we don't have a dedicated recycling person to do that would take this over right now. Whereas Stonington does. So if you probably saw in the paper, they got, I forget how much money.
It was impressive.
It was a huge chunk of money to implement something for the next year and a half or next year. But again, they have someone dedicated. So until we have someone in that position, we don't have the internal capacity to take this on.
Is there somebody, is that a position that's open? That
That was gonna be my question. Are they trying to
No,
get?
I don't like, and again, please understand, I'm so new, so I'm still trying to figure everything out. But what Deb had told me was that the fact is just, they don't have that dedicated person currently.
Right.
And so,
No, we understand the staff.
What about David Aldrich?
Well, I was just gonna ask, is this a bridge
Scara.
to the composting that Scara is gonna set up for this
it
area?
could be, yes.
Yeah, because I listened to a talk that he gave in August, and they're looking to buy land. That's the last thing you heard as well.
Last we heard is they had found a piece of property.
Right,
And so, but I'm not sure if that's the Stonington project or if this, because
No,
their pilot was in
no.
Stonington.
That was the pilot,
Yeah.
not necessarily the same
so
place.
even before this program, they ran a pilot that was super successful. In commercial.
Tom is raising his hand. Tom?
I went to the recycling day in Ledyard on Saturday, and Dave was the guy that you met when you came in with your car. Okay, so I asked him, "Hey, Dave, how's it going? How's the recycling thing doing?" He says, "We're still working on it. It's in a critical time frame right now. We're still working on everything. I really don't want to give you any more details. So just to let you know that's the statement from the guy as of Saturday."
This is like money, just like
Well, I know that's,
money. Here's money. Just need someone to go after the money.
yeah,
Got a plan to use
Yeah,
it.
yeah.
yeah,
right.
yeah.
Well, if there's, do you know that there are issues with the land? That they're trying to buy? I mean,
I think you
When you
mentioned
get
it
into
last
these things,
He's playing it very close to the vest,
yeah,
whatever
the
is.
community gets, not in my backyard
Yeah.
concept, so.
Right,
You know,
so someone had-
it does create, it's a long, arduous process. Just think oral school. So anywho, I guess my question is to the one that was raised here. Is it the fact that we know the staff is overworked and underappreciated? We got that.
No, I'm just.
I said that. I said that. So.
That's not what I'm saying.
So, but the thing is that there's a position that would be able to do it and it hasn't been hired, or it's just not in the budget at all? That's kind of my question.
I will find out.
Because it's,
right,
And that's the hard thing too, because you're exactly right, because you see stuff like this, like $5 million to do this. This is like, you can get a small chunk of that. But again, you need to have the capacity to be able to do it right, because very similar to what Megan was talking about. And you can't, it took us how long to get from the original climate, not even action plan, but climate task force to this point now. So you need to build up that capacity, but I will find out and get to the bottom of that in terms of, was it a position? Is it a position?
yeah.
Is it budgeted? Is it not? And I think the other thing too, is they're looking at like some of these other models and seeing how successful they are. Because that's what I personally saw in Rhode Island.
right.
Yeah, I saw that in Rhode Island. It's a couple communities started and it took we're on, I think, 5 years now to this slow expansion as, okay, it worked here, what didn't work, and constantly refining it. So I think it's similar. But it shows, like, to your point, it shows that, you know, this funding's out there and they see it as a
Not a lack of
priority.
money
Yeah.
that's out there. It's
Yeah.
just our ability to.
No, I'm saying that,
Yeah.
now you, similar to the climate stuff, the state's actually putting that money forward, whereas before you kind of would, you know, get a little bit here, a little bit there and kind of piece it all together. Now they're actually putting some significant funds into this stuff because of all the added values and benefits and whatnot.
Plus federal government said, here's some money for that purpose.
Absolutely.
So.
Get it while you can before
Yeah.
they change their minds again.
Okay.
This is a-
Larry, one additional item that's not, you're not showing here is that this, and the announcement that there's also a due date of October 29th for expressions of interest had to be
I'll read to the bottom.
last week. Or last.
Is this a second round of
I
funding?
just got,
Because Stonington
I just
did
got it
this.
within the last few days.
Yeah, it looks like it's.
There's one that was dated back on the 21st of September.
Oh, is this a reminder?
This might have been a reminder, like 4 days before.
Got it. Makes more sense.
But again, I will still get that answer for you for next time.
Well, there's always another one that
Exactly.
down the road. Okay. All right. Thank you for teasing me out.
Oh, yeah.
That's good. Conservation outreach. That was, let's stop saying that. And this is one that was sent around. Okay, whoops. So if you remember this.
Yep.
All right, and I did get feedback from some folks, so the red are the ones, no one, I can't spell. It
Oh,
looks like.
yeah, those are probably, that's probably because I was out of town and totally distracted.
Oh.
I was in France for basically the whole month, so I didn't do much of any of this, but.
Because I kind of thought that might be you.
Yeah, those were kind of like I'm seeing my guess.
Okay, so,
Yeah.
so this.
Probably better, that would be me, right there.
And how do you put it in?
Yeah.
So something like brochures and maps could be student projects.
The invasives and I would track that down.
No, Megan's the expert.
I know.
That's why I think I fired that off to you or somebody. I fired it off to somebody.
Yeah, no, that was a travel, I think it was a
Yeah.
travel day for me. I couldn't go.
Okay,
Do you remember where I put my name? Because I don't remember.
well, yeah, it's on here.
Oh, is that
I put them on here.
what we did last time for the last meeting?
That I lost.
We said that we,
Yeah, anyway.
I think Tom and Tom and Larry were the only two that.
No, Ann gave me,
Oh, did you?
No, I gave you like 4 things.
what happened to it? I'm sorry. I must have had a.
We did sea level rise info maps, and I think I remember that.
What was that?
Sea level rise info maps, wasn't that you?
It might have been one of them. Let me see.
I mean, I
Oh,
think
here,
we all can
Kristen's
kind of.
list. Here we go. I said composting unless you were doing it.
Right, okay, yes. I
I'm
do
happy to
remember
work
that now.
together with
And then info on cleanup days and SCARA waste collection, sea level rise, and then
capital. Well, no, you're not capital.
yeah, the
Yeah.
connected terrain barrel availability, solar, et
Yeah.
cetera.
Okay, well, I think,
So those-
I mean, again, it's not required necessarily that everything gets, but at least that we have enough to get something done. Now, again.
This is the perfect kind of thing for this.
For a project.
Exactly.
Right, so basically, come up, if you have an idea, and that goes, the whole outreach thing, the students are,
Yeah, this
they're
is
really
perfect.
good at this kind of stuff.
Yeah, because they can track stuff down
Yeah.
for us and.
I mean, they could actually take a stab at writing some of these
Exactly,
handouts.
if they wanted to. if you
We
have
don't
someone that
have
wants
to write
use
them.
it, yeah.
These handouts exist.
Yeah,
You're just, all we're gonna do is Xerox them or print them, or I
Right.
don't know if there's money or we're doing it ourselves or
But
whatever,
if
but.
we identify things that don't exist, or that we
Right.
want to somehow.
What?
I can find out what the budget is for this.
Yeah,
Yeah, it is,
but
you don't
basically,
have to.
anybody that has something that they think could use some
Yeah.
more help, turn it into a potential project for, and this, every spring, there's another group of students
Yeah.
to do stuff,
Right.
That's cool.
so.
Yeah, and this is a great experience for them just
Yeah.
to put together,
Yeah.
put together a booth, put together
Right.
a program, little program.
All right, so I think one of the things we should probably do is project, is if students want to do something this, and that kind of changes the nature of how we approach it. Yeah. So, she said January, obviously that's when the spring semester starts.
Right.
Would something that maybe
January.
would have been late December or early January? What's the?
I'm gonna start now. Well, I'm gonna start now. I'm hoping that by next month's meeting, I'll have the preliminary list of projects with the description that we talked about, and then you could look at that list and generate, oh, well, let's add this to the list, right? So,
Maybe meet with her before the holidays, maybe?
or the January meeting.
Because there's that, they're off, right, from.
Right, we were off from middle December to the last week in January, so our January meeting be perfect, because that's still before the semester starts. And we'll have had a chance to play with the ideas by then and start to put together a list, to then take to the students and present to them as possibilities.
Okay.
I was gonna say too, like this list here, if you're gonna come back with,
Right.
after meeting with Jennifer, and you're gonna come back with these kind of like little paragraphs. You then take this list again and say, okay, what are we missing? How can this intersect in here and add it to there? And then you check that off, check that off, check that off. It just makes it a nice.
And yeah, we're talking
Project.
brochures here, but you know, they're like social media
We're talking
experts. They
QR
take
codes
this to
and-
online, right? Take it
Exactly.
to, you know, do we want to start some kind of a blog? Do we want to have on our page places that have information for things? So they would be perfect to take that information and help us create the online social media presence that goes along with it.
Okay. Moving along.
This, now, wait, let's, before we, let's get this back. So this is the conservation outreach, just so everybody knows that the date and location have been set for this Earth Day Fair.
Oh, cool. When is it?
It's gonna be, April 22nd.
Birthday.
Yep, Earth Day.
Imagine that.
You can imagine that?
Thursday for the Earth Day Fair.
Yeah, I know how it worked out, right? At the Groton Library.
Oh, nice.
Oh,
Isn't that
Okay.
a great location?
That's perfect.
Because we've
you
been,
got that pollination garden right there.
exactly, we've got the pollinator garden there. It's an indoor outdoor
Stomp all over.
space. So if it's an ugly day, it can be mostly indoors, but we met yesterday and we're basically going to have a docket of speakers throughout the day in one of the big meeting rooms. And it's the broad categories are, planting, eating, pollinating, waste, solar energy, there's just going to be kind of a speaker on each topic, and lots of excitement about different vendors coming in and stuff. So it should be and this will be the great time for us to debut our conservation Conservation Commission table.
Yep.
So that could be our target for our first,
That sounds great.
Yeah.
And that's perfect timing for the semester, because it gives them a couple months of the school year to get the project done and have it presented by the end of April, and then this class is end in May, so they want to have this done by April.
and they've got other stuff to do. Once they're done with April.
Perfect
yeah.
timing, exactly, that's what I'm saying, yeah, it's
Yeah.
perfect time, yeah.
Taking way too many notes here. Nah. Let's see, okay, 4.8. Well, I don't have any updates other than I did have some thoughts with Nick was talking about how we want to work with the town on the debt section to be updated. So I think we're gonna, again, a long-term action plan here. And the first part of that is still going to be open space definition, and part of that is going to be the discussion we're having with the town staff about which properties are classified as what. So let me kind of feed right into that. So we had provided the listing. The planning staff looked at it, reviewed it all, but kind of kicked out Tom, I'm giving it, I know we weren't going to go into it, but I just thought I'd give them a quick status. 61 parcels they kicked out that says, correct me if I'm wrong, Dave, but you know, we wouldn't put those as open space in the published viewer today. And so we asked for that list. We just got it on Friday, late Friday. So I said I wasn't gonna get into it here, other than give you guys a quick status. Tom has the listing as well. So I think what we need to do next is to look at what they sent and sit there and craft a response. Because some of them didn't make sense to me. There was 13 parcels of over 5 acres for 364 acres out of the 400 acres of 61 parcels, which obviously kind of nets what we have to look at. Now, part of that was the Wolfbrook property, which he said, well, we don't own it yet. That's fair. That's 60, that's almost half. So, you know, maybe it's not as bad, but I'm troubled by all these small ones, which some of which have deed restrictions in them. That I don't get. So, I mean, so at that time, I'm assuming that by the next meeting, between you and I, we can kind of come back to the commission and kind of give a yay, nay on some of these.
I hope so. I have not had an opportunity because I've been busy this weekend. I was out of town to do any kind of work on this spreadsheet that Noah sent to us at 5 o'clock on Friday night.
All right, I did do it. I'll send what I did to you. How's that? To Tom. Okay.
I guess the only thing I'd say on that note too is one of the big differences, and again, you guys can respond however you want, however you see fit. But this was what I got an update from Noah today, and basically said that the two data sets are really pretty close. They're a lot closer than you actually think they are. But in your data set, you are considering all PA 49 land as open space, or
no, it was there at a layer.
Yes.
And it's not open space, but it's not really protected. So
again, the question was what Noah was saying and what came back from the staff was that yes, it's however you want to say, it's currently protected because they're paying a lower tax rate because of the current use, but that can change overnight. If all of a sudden they decide to, so that's that's a response.
Those my own personal view, I wouldn't argue that because you're right. Yeah. But the ones I picked up on were things that had it in the deed that they were open space by deed. Why the hell isn't that in there? That's
go back to that, and then we can totally go back to that.
So I get the 490, which is why it's a separate layer.
Yeah. And then the other one was, the town-owned facilities like the annex. It's hard for us to consider this open space when the majority, and again, you can like.
That part that's kind of like in the easement discussion. Yeah. That says, are there pieces of that have a conservation easement?
Exactly.
And that's again, a little bit separate argument.
Yes. Yep.
So some of those might be, okay, we understand that. We'll put that in the easement category.
Yeah, absolutely.
And, we'll address that later. Yeah. Now, on that same score, in my vein, in my discussion with Noah, it was like, look, is that my objective is to get a town approved version of the viewer out there, that we can agreement on. Now, we could have a internal town only version of that.
Yes.
That has this additional information, which has maybe the PA 490 is public information. Either is or isn't. So I don't have a problem with that being there as a separate layer. The question of the definition of open space, we don't necessarily count it, or we count it sort of kind of. But the easement stuff, I agreed that since that's going to take a long time, and through Tom's effort, he's gotten all the easement information there. So we can have a view of it, but not necessarily publish it because that's fraught with danger.
Yes.
Until it's without a survey, that I get. So I think we may wind up, my guess, we're going to wind up with a public version and a internal version.
Yeah, and that's kind of what we were saying. So we're right on the same wavelength right now. It's like that, obviously the worry is sometimes if you put too much stuff out there, I'm like, oh, I saw it, because the public's going to say open space and they're just going to think everything's open space. So if it's on the map, it's open space. And all of a sudden they show up and they are not supposed to be there. So that's I think that's our concern from the town side of things. So, but I think you're exactly right. We'll get there. I think we're just trying to, kind of make sure we're on the same lines.
So
when we're
we're
looking
gonna
at
have a
these
little more give
things.
and
Yeah,
take,
absolutely. Yep.
but we're getting there.
I know, and we are.
Longer than
I know. Well,
Hmm.
we're trying.
Okay, I think that's it. Anything to add on that, Tom?
Yes, I do.
Okay.
One thing I think just for Dave's background on this, excuse me, is that we've been kind of proactive as far as on the division of where and categorization, whether it's dedicated open space, facility open space, or managed open space, or other open space, or other town property, excuse me. And we've been trying to draw things in. And so that's when we went off and did the record search and find all these things. And the other thing is that if a property has not been gone through a use, process, we kind of let it be in the dedicated open space by default if it meets some reasonable criteria that it's usable to the citizens of the town. I know that from a selling perspective, there's everything you like. The theory could be is we can sell the whole town so make it everything is a moneymaker in getting but that's not what our charter is here from the Conservation Commission. We're here to get sort of some balance between, as we outline in our conservation open space plan, to get a balance between having taxable land and having dedicated open space. And also we've never seen the list that was in the POC that was developed by the makers of the POCD for 2016 that came up with how many parcels were actually calculated into the numbers that are in the POCD today to come up with the percentages. So we had to develop this from our own review here as the various people that have been sitting through the parcel teams here. I know Michelle's been involved, Larry's been involved, Bray has been involved, I've been involved. And so we've gone through a lot of iterations here. And that's one of the things that's driving us trying to be proactive here and to try to get this and then mechanize this so that we're doing our due diligence as a Conservation Commission. We have a responsibility to have a good inventory, and we have not had it in the town. And so we're kind of forcing it on you, on the staff to some degree. I think we've been doing a lot of staff work here for myself to move this forward. So that's just the history of over the last 2 years here. Okay.
Totally understood. And I don't think we question the amount of work that you all have put into that. I mean, I think that this is an unbelievable amount of work. So I think we're getting there, Larry. We really are. And Tom, I think we're getting much closer than we've been. And a lot of that, and most of that is because of you all. You know what I mean? So it's not. I think we're thinking from the public face, and so we're there. We're really close, or we're closer, however you want to say it, closer. Hey, closer is better, so
Closer.
but totally, Tom, thank you for that, and totally understood.
Oh, that's so much fun. Okay. I guess just in terms of cleanup, in the last website, in the November, every month I update the website. So we put Dave's name in there, took Bruce out.
I've gotten at least, no, I haven't gotten anything.
You haven't got anything. I wouldn't expect it. We did the section 7 update, and we did the Birch Creek plan, stewardship plan updated. Somehow that got missed, so the latest one is now in there. Now, the other thing that was in there is the section 7. Section 7 review. I said
No, it was in the packet too.
it's in the package, yeah. So I can share that. I don't know why I have a trouble finding space. Your screen and put that up. Okay, so
A lot of yellow.
yeah,
I know.
well, that's because yellow's updated, so I touched everything in the class.
Can you see that from here?
You guys gave me a lot of data. So this is more of a verification of what you all told me and to see if I got it right. So yes, it's all yellow.
Yay,
I'd like to get
that's
some
good, right?
green. So you'll notice that some of these, we said, okay, we're gonna include it in the POCD. So that's rather than having a due date, rather than putting 2026 in there, I kind of label that POCD because we're gonna have different phases of that. You know, the ongoing ones, I guess I'm not. If things are starting to be standard, I'm kind of thinking that if it's ongoing and we're kind of working through it and there's somebody assigned to it, you know, do I need to track it on this list? My view is I kind of like to, it's not retired, it's always there, but just not necessarily put it up there for.
Not have to be talked about all the time. 'Cause people-
Yes,
So
correct.
people can report on stuff when they do it.
Right. So 7.2.2.1, coastal plain, that's POC. So next to it, POCD. And I got some text in there that kind of says, now in here, this is what we just said. So we're going to be supporting sustainability manager, right? And as we work through, they're trying to figure out how we all work together in crafting the POCD. So that's where I was going to go after you and her to say, you know, how do we form this little
It'll be an
team here
interesting
that at least
process.
work on that?
It's gonna, yeah, so it's gonna be interesting because again, this is through the planning and zoning committee. So like, I think this is one thing that's probably gonna come up in one of the next planning and zoning, you know, because as they start talking about next steps and your desire to do this and stuff like that. So again,
We're an inputter,
right, yeah.
right? So say our job is recommend. So we want to recommend what that section is that's consistent with our updated and improved conservation plan, right? Which is still consistent with the last PLCD, but needs to have some changes. The PLC needs to have some changes. Anyway. So that's fine. Well, I'm sure we'll have that.
And I don't know, Deb would say she could probably tell us exactly the time frame from when that's gonna start in terms of the consultant and everything else like that.
It's, I think, third quarter next
Yeah. I think
next
so.
year. Yeah. So it's not, like I said, it's not a new thing, but I'd like to line up who does what to whom part of it before things get busy.
I think, you know, and maybe just a suggestion, when, and I'm not saying now, I'm not even saying first quarter, but I'm saying maybe one of the monthly meetings is dedicated to that. You know, that you can, almost more of not a workshop, but a brainstorming session to kind of go through, you know, like, you know what you want in the POCD, right? What you would like to see from the perspective of the commission. Maybe there might be an opportunity to have a bigger discussion about that.
Maybe a special meeting.
Yeah, or something like that. I'm just trying to think of.
That's how we created the
Yeah.
plan of conservation. We spent meeting after meeting just on that. We didn't do a lot of these other things. So I suspect you're right. That's the only way you can do it.
Yeah, exactly. I just know we have a lot of topics and, you know, so
Yeah.
dedicate. No, I'm not saying a bad thing. I'm just.
You get stuff done though.
I know you do. Hey, this is my third meeting, you know, and that is the one thing I knew from the first meeting. Yeah, even sitting here as a fly on the wall for the first one, you definitely do, you know, so.
Let's see, so 7231 is ongoing, that's dealing with the Groton utilities. POCD, you can see how this is going.
Awesome. Scroll on through, Larry.
Well, hold on. So now this one is,
Well, that's on your list.
it's on the list of the Tree Board University. I did, Tom embarrassed me here, so he said he took it. I've got my certificate, Tom. I went through and took the course.
Finished it,
Yeah,
started,
Tree University. Well, I mean, a lot of it is generic stuff.
yeah.
Was it online? I mean,
No, it's online.
It's online.
Oh, okay, I'll do it at
I
some
think
point.
if you look at, I think I put it out there in the.
You did, no.
I didn't do it.
No, because I couldn't get the link for it, so if you send me that link, I can make sure.
https://treeboardu.org.
So that was my problem. I couldn't get any of the links, the hyperlinks that you put in.
Oh,
I
that's because it
could not-
got
I
converted.
clicked on it, but it wouldn't convert,
That's
so.
because it went from Word to,
Yes.
or I'm sorry, Excel to
Yes,
Oh.
yeah.
PDF.
PDF.
Yeah,
Yeah.
you
I
gotta
could
change
just-
it back
just
in.
type
from
it
like-
Oh, yes.
PDFs retain like though.
Sometimes they do, yeah.
Sometimes they do.
Just
I- you
what-
know,
maybe it's our
I didn't test it. That's on me. Now, it was interesting and it's useful. So it's good background information. But, the question is, what then do you do? Right? I mean, they talk about having a tree steward, program. But I think the town has,
You're a tree warden, yeah.
you have
But
a tree.
isn't that our
warden.
response? Well, we
It's
are
not
the tree
clear,
advisory
though.
board.
That's to just figure out what trees to trim and stuff for the wires. It's not really a tree
It's not-
steward.
Yeah, it's not quite this. That's why I think if we all look at that, then we can have a discussion that says, well, if we're going to be the tree advisory board for the town, what the hell does that mean? Now, again, remember my earlier comment, there's a lot on our plate. Is that something we need to prioritize and work on? So that is what I would say is something. There you're up? Oh, really?
Shortly, a lot faster.
Okay,
Oh.
so.
Adjourn.
So no, without objection, we're going to recess.
Okay.
So hold for, and we're gonna reconvene. So
Come and watch.
let's hold it. We'll all go in.
So close.
We're so close. So we are prepared to do that. So Tom, go jump on the other Zoom. And what I thought is Tom and I are going to take the lead, and the rest of the commission will be there because we're here. So
We'll be there for moral support.
for moral support. Okay. Okey dokey. So I think I can, let me.
Maybe close that recording.
I'm gonna do it.
Yeah, just pause it. I don't know how you can pause it or.
Oh, there, pause.
Right there.
Right, we're back.
All right, we're back. Apologize for those out there don't see the delay, so they're in good shape. So we're almost through here. What time is it? Oh, great. So let me quick go through. We were looking at the section 7.
Tom, you're back.
Oh, there it is. Ongoing. Yeah, these things are all out in time. So we're in pretty good shape on the actions, guys. I mean, that to me says that there's a lot of work that you've done. But I did want, and kind of relates to that experience we just did. But I did want to remove, I'm now down to reported share, so I think I'm done with this. And that's the only other one probably you care about. So in terms of the, that is that there's a couple things. Parks and Rec focus meeting is tomorrow. And they're running focus groups and they made invites. Mark Berry is running this. He didn't want to overload it with conservation members. He said you only get 2 and you only get 1 per session. So I think I sent that out.
Yeah.
Yep, so
And Tom
so
said
I'm
he was
doing 1 and
going
Tom's doing 1. So we'll take care of that. Town-owned property reuse evaluation process. So as you recall, over the past months, quarters, is pushing this. So finally, last Wednesday, I was invited to the session. It was Zoomed, so you can go back and look at it. So I if you're interested. How do I want to say this? The proposal needs work. I suggested a number of items. One of the items on there is they had in their evaluation process is they wanted to go through and look at all open space to determine which ones could be sold. And I said, time out, guys. This is not the process. This is not the right, that should not be a function of this group. Right? That's a whole different mechanism. You want to, that we talked about. You want to do There's gotta be, it's gotta go through town council, it's gotta be, you just can't say, I want to throw this on the table and let's go through and put it out for bid. It doesn't work that way. So, but they agreed. In terms of, well, maybe we should take that out. I mean, so we took it out of the document. And there was a proposal to formally add the 4 commissions to that board, being ECD, the Housing Authority, Planning and Zoning, Conservation. And so I supported that. And unfortunately, they meet every other week. And, so I'm taking one for the team. And I would hope to kind of make sure that the goals and aims of the Conservation Commission is there. I did declare that I have parochial interest, and that's how I would participate. All right, is to lobby, make sure they don't get carried away. So, but at least a progress being made. There is a document that's being reviewed. I would say that probably for our December meeting, I think I could share the draft with you guys. I mean, it is a public and open meeting, so there's not secret stuff here. So I think what I'll do is, Dave, I think is the property, I think it's Town-Owned Property Evaluation Committee or something. Hope at the December meeting, and I'll do that in terms of draft review. Right, and hopefully get that out there. Okay, next is you guys get to bring up the topic. Report of commission and report of staff. So anybody?
Then you want to talk about the other quick 2 things so does everyone know about the sustainability conference on December 1st? It was an email sent out.
Yes.
That sits,
Yeah, that gets in. It's a webinar.
Yeah, it's a webinar. So you all got that, all right?
Yep.
So,
Yep.
that was on your list too.
Yeah.
Who sent that out?
Well, it came from,
That was Scheffler?
Yeah, actually, Debbie sent it out. I think she forwarded it on to everyone.
yeah, sent out, and so then I think I forwarded it out or you
Okay,
forwarded it out.
yeah.
So, yeah. I mean, like I said, it's not an in-person meeting, it's a webinar meeting. So that's fine, that's December 1st. And the Kakiewicz meeting occurred, and now Tom attended. So that one, so you're pushing me to extend the meeting here.
No, I'm not.
Okay.
I'm just checking them off. How are you saying? I'm just checking them off.
So, Tom, do you want to make any comments? To your
Well, first off, I did attend the Kakiewicz thing here. I actually got a hat there that says Conservation Commission on it now, you can see. So
Hey,
Nice.
boy.
that's what I've been wearing to cut down the blinding light from above here so you can see better. That's why I've been wearing a hat all night here. But I attended with 2 of the members of the Inland Wetlands Commission this year. We actually carpooled down together. It was all the discussions were very focused on inland wetlands this year because it was the keynote speaker was an inland wetland lawyer, and most of the workshops were focused because it was the 50th anniversary of the wetlands legislation and stuff. So that's why the focus was principally, and I have to, that's fair. We have, conservation things. It's a joint organization, so they kind of got the nod this year. So you didn't really miss that much from a conservation perspective. The one thing I can say, the third that you go through, they have the keynote speaker of the business meeting, and then 3 workshops. The third workshop that I attended, I thought was the most interesting, was leveraging systems of thinking and geospatial technologies for advanced sustainable watershed management. And this was led by the same lady that also presented at the Baker Cove ECCD meeting that I went to in October at the beginning of the month, where she's off on a missionary effort here through the the Sea Grant program to go off and do things within the whole Eastern Connecticut coastal area relative to getting people to think about how do I save the sound, what kind of land use resiliency programs we're doing, and how I increase my equity and diversity type of aspects of what I'm doing in my, whether I'm doing land acquisition, watershed protection, or whatever. So interesting stuff. How we'll do this in the future, I'll see what we can get, but she is a resource that's available that we can get through the ECCD if should we want to pursue some area in this. But at this time, I don't see a specific program to apply it to. So that's my report. Thank you.
Thank you, Tom. Went to the conference and, man, I feel
You
terrible.
want a hat? Go on your own and get a hat.
Oh.
He was on wetlands, I was. Okay. Boy, you're tough. Back to you.
Mine is a really simple, quick update. I think all of you have a,
Yep.
except for Tom, who's not here, have a copy of the 2023 meeting schedule. Just need to confirm that everything's still good, time's still good. You're happy in this room? If so, I'm good.
We're happy.
All right, you're happy, I'm happy.
Without objection.
No objection,
Without
yes.
objection.
All right.
The schedule. All right, I'm looking for a motion to adjourn.
Second.
All right, got those. All in favor?
Aye.
Unanimous.
All right.
All right, guys.
Have a good day.
See you next
now.
month.
I made it off and tell them I'm